Hello and welcome to Arnie Short Stories. I hope you enjoy this story. I'm going to try and upload a new story each day. The Haunted Library. On the southern edge of the Isle of Wight, in the sleepy village of Nettlecoombe, stood a library that Tyne had forgotten. With its Gothic arches, cracked stained glass, and ivy-veiled walls, the building seemed perpetually shrouded in gloom. Locals whispered of the library's dark history, a tale of Edith Crane, the librarian who had perished 50 years ago under inexplicable circumstances. Some said she had been crushed by a collapsing bookshelf, others swore she had been found hanging from the grand chandelier, though no rope was ever recovered. Holly Arnold had heard the stories growing up, but as a historian and skeptic she dismissed them as small-town folklore. So when the library came up for sale, she saw not a haunted relic but an opportunity to transform it into an archive for local history. It'll be a passion project, she told herself. Day 1. First day of restoration began uneventfully. Holly arrived with cleaning supplies and her trusty flashlight, determined to explore the dim recesses of the building. The air inside was heavy, thick with the scent of decaying paper and mildew. As she dusted off her reading desk near the central fireplace, she noticed something odd. A single book lay on the floor, a guide to the supernatural. Fitting, Holly muttered, placing it back on the shelf. Hours passed as she cleared cobwebs and catalogued the surviving volumes. It wasn't until dusk that she noticed the temperature drop. Her breath fogged before her, and an unnatural stillness settled over the room. Then she heard the faint rustle of pages being turned. "Hello?" Holly called, her voice echoing in the vast space. No answer. She followed the sound to the far corner of the library, where a massive oak desk sat beneath a dust-covered chandelier. Atop the desk lay a journal, its pages flipping as though an invisible hand guided them. Holly froze, her heart hammering in her chest. "It wind," she whispered. The pages stopped abruptly on an entry written in faded ink: "To whom it may concern, beware the ghosts of the written word. They hold truths that can never be erased." The first night. Holly stayed late, determined to rationalize what had happened. She convinced herself it was nothing more than her imagination running wild in the eerie atmosphere. She brewed coffee in the small kitchenette and set to work in the main reading hall. Around midnight, the chandelier began to sway. At first it was gentle, like a pendulum stirred by a breeze. Then it grew violent, the crystal prisms clinking together in a dissonant melody. Holly stood, clutching her mug, her eyes locked on the trembling fixture. "Who's there?" she demanded. The chandelier stilled. But then came the unmistakable sound of footsteps, soft, deliberate, and impossibly close. Holly grabbed her flashlight and swept it across the room. In its beam she caught a fleeting glimpse of a figure, a woman in a high-necked blouse and long skirt, her face pale as the moon, her eyes sunk in voids. Holly screamed, dropping the flashlight. When she dared to look again, the figure was gone. Unearthing the past. Determined to uncover the truth, Holly spent the next day researching Edith Crane's death. The local archives offered little beyond a coroner's report: death by misadventure. Frustrated, Holly turned to the library itself, searching for clues. In a locked cabinet, she discovered a stack of letters tied with a crimson ribbon. They were addressed to Edith from an unknown admirer. Most were benign, filled with flowery prose, but the last one sent chills down Holly's spine. "If I cannot have you, no one will. Tonight, we shall write the final chapter together." Holly's stomach churned. The date on the letter matched the day Edith had died. The confrontation. That evening, Holly decided to confront the ghost. Armed with the journal she had found earlier in the letters, she waited in the grand reading hall. Midnight came, and with it the now familiar chill. "I know what happened to you," Holly said aloud. "You were murdered." The chandelier began to sway again, and from the shadows Edith Crane emerged. Her spectral form was translucent, but undeniably there, her eyes filled with sorrow. "You've read my story," the ghost whispered. Yes," Holly said. "But I need to know the truth." Edith pointed to the journal, which began flipping pages on its own. The pages stopped at a drawing of a man's face. Beneath it, a name was scrawled: Henry Blackwell. Holly recognized the name. He had been a wealthy patron of the library, a man long dead but notorious for his temper and obsession with Edith. Breaking the curse. Is this why you haunt this place?" Holly asked. Edith nodded, tears streaming down her ghostly cheeks. "But the truth will not free me." The ghost gestured to the journal. Holly understood immediately. She gathered the letters in the journal, stacking them in the fireplace. Striking a match, she hesitated only for a moment before tossing it onto the pile. As the flames consumed the pages, Edith's form began to fade. "I thank you." And then she was gone. Epilogue. Holly restored the library, transforming it into a vibrant community center. But she kept one relic of its haunted past, Edith's journal, now scorched at the edges, displayed in a glass case. The library's ghost was gone, but Holly would never forget the chilling night she spent uncovering its secrets. On quiet evenings, when the wind rustled the trees outside, she sometimes thought she heard Edith's voice, a faint whisper among the shelves, "Beware the ghost of the written word." Years later, the library thrived, becoming a cornerstone of Nettlecomb's cultural life. Tourists flocked to see the historic building, drawn by its eerie reputation and the whispered tales of Edith Crane's ghost. Holly, now a respected historian, often gave talks about the library's haunted past, though she left out the more personal, chilling details of her encounters. But some mysteries refused to stay buried. One late autumn evening, Holly was locking up after a busy day. The last visitors had left hours ago, and the only sound was the creaking of the ancient wooden beams as the wind howled outside. She turned off the lights and made her way to the front door, her footsteps echoing in the vast hall. As she reached for the latch, she heard the unmistakable rustle of pages. Her breath caught. She turned, her heart pounding, and saw a faint glow emanating from the far corner of the library, the same corner where she had first heard the mysterious sounds years ago. "Not again," she whispered. She approached cautiously, the flashlight in her hand trembling slightly. The glow intensified as she drew near, revealing a single book lying open on the desk. Its title was unfamiliar, The Librarian's Revenge. Holly frowned. This wasn't part of the library's collection, and she certainly hadn't placed it there. She reached out to touch it, but the pages began turning on their own, faster and faster, until they stopped abruptly on a chapter titled The Curse of the Next Keeper. A chill ran down Holly's spine as she read the opening lines. "The ghost of Edith Crane may have departed, but the library is never truly free. For every librarian who dares to keep its doors open, a new shadow shall rise. A new haunting." Over the next few weeks, strange occurrences became routine. Books moved from one shelf to another without explanation. Footsteps echoed through the halls at all hours, though the library was locked. Visitors reported seeing fleeting figures in the mirrors and hearing whispers in the reading rooms. One evening, as Holly was sorting through old donation records, she felt a sudden pressure on her shoulder, a cold, heavy weight. She froze, her pulse racing, and turned her head ever so slightly. No one was there. But then she heard it, a deep, guttural voice, unlike Edith's soft tones. "You set her free. Now you belong to us." The voice lingered in the air, reverberating through the walls. Holly bolted upright, her chair crushing to the floor. The room darkened, the lights flickering until they extinguished completely. Holly fumbled for her flashlight, its beam piercing the oppressive blackness. In its glow, she saw something that made her blood run cold, the tall, shadowy figure standing by the fireplace. It wasn't Edith. This was something darker, more malevolent. The fight for freedom. Holly refused to abandon the library, but she knew she couldn't face this new entity alone. She sought out help from paranormal investigators, mediums, and even a local priest, all of whom approached the task with varying degrees of skepticism and fear. The investigators recorded unsettling phenomena, books falling from shelves, sudden temperature drops, and inexplicable growls. The medium, an elderly woman named Margaret, conducted a séance and made a grim declaration. "The spirit is not tied to the library itself," Margaret said. "It's tied to you." Holly's blood turned to ice. "To me?" Margaret looked at her with pity. "When you burned the journal, you severed the connection to Edith, but you awakened something else, something older, something that had been dormant." The final chapter. Determined to break the curse, Holly delved into the library's oldest records, searching for any clue about the malevolent force. She discovered a chilling truth. Before Edith Crane, another librarian had vanished under mysterious circumstances. And before that, another. The pattern stretched back centuries. Each librarian had left behind a single, cryptic note before their disappearance. The most recent read, "The library demands a sacrifice." Holly realized what she had to do. On the anniversary of Edith's death, she prepared a ritual using the clues she had pieced together from the cryptic notes. She stayed in the library past midnight, lighting candles and placing the surviving relics of past librarians' journals, photographs, and personal belongings in a circle on the floor. As the clock struck 12, the air grew heavy. The shadowy figure materialized once more, towering over her, its eyes burning like embers. "I am not your keeper," Holly said. The figure roared, its form twisting and writhing, but Holly stood her ground. She held out the final relic, the burned edge of Edith's journal. "You are bound to this place no longer," she declared. The candles flared, and a deafening scream filled the room. The figure dissolved into smoke, which spiraled upward before vanishing entirely. The library fell silent. A new beginning. Holly emerged from the ordeal exhausted but victorious. The disturbances ceased, and the library's atmosphere lightened. Though she remained its guardian, she felt no fear. But she kept one warning etched in her mind: beware the ghosts of the written word. Some stories are never truly finished. And on quiet nights, when the wind whispered through the old windows, she sometimes thought she heard the faint rustle of pages, reminders that the library's secrets were never far from the surface. Thank you for listening. I hope you enjoyed this story. Please don't forget to like, and even better, like and subscribe. Thank you very much, and I hope you have had or have a great day.